Download this code from codegive.com, link in the description below. Burke learns Blazor custom validation with Blazor forms, a deep dive. This tutorial will guide you through implementing custom validation in Blazor forms, following the concepts and approaches often showcased by the brilliant Burke Holland. We'll focus on clarity, best practices, and providing a solid foundation for you to build upon. Prerequisites *** basic understanding of Blazor components and C. **.NET SDK installed, preferably the latest stable version. *** a code editor like Visual Studio, VS Code, or Writer. What we'll cover **. 1. Setting up a Blazor project ** creating a new Blazor project, server or WASM, the principles apply equally. 2. Creating a model * defining the data model that will be bound to the form. 3. Building a basic form * creating a Blazor form using editform, dataannotationsvalidator, and input components. 4. Introducing custom validation attributes * creating custom validation attributes to enforce specific business rules. 5. Implementing a custom validation logic * defining the custom validation logic within the attribute. 6. Displaying validation errors * using validation message and other techniques to show errors to the user. 7. Using iValidatable object for complex validation * implementing iValidatable object for validation logic that requires multiple properties or dependencies. 8. Asynchronous validation, remote validation making asynchronous calls to validate data against external services or databases. 9. Custom validation components * building reusable components to encapsulate validation logic. 10. Integrating with dependency injection * leveraging DI to inject services into validation logic. 11. Unit testing custom validation * ensuring the validation logic is robust and reliable. Let's get started. 1. Setting up a Blazor project. Create a new Blazor WebAssembly project, or Blazor server project if you prefer, in your terminal. 2. Creating a model. Let's define a registration model that we'll use for our form. This model will include properties with validation rules. Create a folder called models and add a class named registrationModel.cs. Explanation *** required, string length, email address, data type, compare are built-in data annotations attributes. They handle common validation scenarios. * must be true and adult age are custom validation attributes that we will implement later. * date of birth is nullable using datetime, to handle situations when the user hasn't filled in the date. This is a good practice as validation on datetime might throw errors if not handled. 3. Building a basic form. Now, let's create a Blazor component to display the form. Navigate to Pages and modify index.razor. Explanation *** edit form, wraps the entire form. The model attribute binds the form to the registration model instance. Data annotations validator, enables the use of data annotations for validation. It automatically applies the attributes defined in the registration model. Validation summary, displays a summary of all validation errors. Input text, input checkbox, input date, Blazor input components that handle binding to the model properties. Crucially, they also handle the necessary parsing and type conversion. Validation message, displays the validation message for a specific property. The for attribute uses a lambda expression to identify the property. Handle valid submit and handle invalid submit, event handlers that are called when the form is submitted, depending on whether the validation is successful or not. 4. Introducing custom validation attributes. Now, Let's create our first custom validation attribute, must be true attribute. Create a folder called validation attributes and add a class named must be true attribute.cs. Explanation asterisk. Asterisk must be true attribute inherits from validation attribute. Asterisk is valid, object value, is the method that performs the validation logic. Asterisk it checks if the value is true. If it's not a boolean or if it's false, the validation fails. Asterisk it handles null values. This is important because some properties might be nullable and could be null when the validation runs. How you handle nulls depends on your business requirements. 5. Implementing the adult age attribute. Now let's create the second custom validation attribute. Create a new class named adultageattribute.cs in the validation attributes folder. Explanation asterisk. Asterisk this attribute takes a minimum age in the constructor. Asterisk it overrides the isValid, object obj value, validation context, method. The validation context provides information about the object being validated. Asterisk it calculates the age based on the date of birth and checks if it meets the minimum age requirement. Asterisk it returns a validation result if the validation fails, including an error message. If the validation succeeds, it returns validation result.success. Asterisk the code handles null datetime values and returns a success. This is important, or the validation won't work properly with nullable date fields. 6. Displaying validation errors. We're already displaying validation errors using the validation message component in the index.razor file. This component automatically displays the error message associated with the property being validated. The validation summary component displays all validation errors in one place. 7. Using iValidatable object for complex validation. Sometimes, validation logic requires comparing multiple properties or performing more complex calculations. For these scenarios, you can implement the iValidatable object interface in your model. Let's add a validation that the username must include @symbol, but only if the email is empty. Explanation asterisk. Asterisk the registration model now implements iValidatable object. Asterisk the validation context method is where you put your complex validation logic. Asterisk it checks if the email is empty and the username doesn't contain the @symbol, then adds the error to the username field. Asterisk yield return is used to return multiple validation results. 8. Asynchronous validation, remote validation. For scenarios where you need to validate against a remote service or database, you'll need asynchronous validation. We can simulate this with a task.delay. Let's create a new unique username attribute.cs. Important notes for production asterisk. Asterisk do not use .getAwaiter, .getResult. In production code it blocks the UI thread, leading to a bad user experience and potentially deadlocks. Asterisk the proper way to handle asynchronous validation in Blazor is more complex and involves creating a custom edit context or wrapping the entire form in a component that handles the async calls. This is because the dataannotationsvalidator is synchronous. Now, you can add the new attribute to the username property in the registration model.cs. 9. Custom validation components. You can create custom Blazor components to encapsulate validation logic and make it reusable. This is useful for complex validation scenarios or when you want to provide a specific UI for validation errors. We won't cover the code for a full component here for brevity, but the general idea is: 1. Create a Blazor component that takes the value to be validated as a parameter. 2. Inside the component, perform the validation logic. 3. Display the error message if the validation fails. 4. The component can use event callback to notify the parent component of the validation result. 10. Integrating with dependency injection. You can inject services into your custom validation attributes to access data or perform more complex logic. This is particularly useful for remote validation or when you need to access configuration settings. To do this, 1. Register the service in the program.cs file, or startup.cs for older projects. 2. Create a constructor in your custom validation attribute that takes the service as a parameter. 3. Use the getService method of the validation context to resolve the service instance. Example asterisk. First, create a service. Then, update unique username attribute.cs, note the activator utilities constructor attribute. Finally, update program.cs, or startup.cs. Explanation asterisk. Asterisk. The username checker service is registered with the D container using add_scoped. Scoped lifetime is appropriate for most web applications. Asterisk. The unique username attribute S constructor now accepts an username checker instance. The D container will automatically provide this instance when the attribute is created. Asterisk. We are also adding a parameterless constructor, which is necessary for the dataannotationsvalidator to work correctly, as it uses reflection to create the attribute instances. Within the isValid method, if the _username checker wasn't injected via constructor, the code retrieves the instance from the validation context instead. This makes the attribute work both with and without did. Asterisk. The validation logic now uses the injected username checker to check if the username is available. 11. Unit testing custom validation. Unit testing is crucial to ensure that your custom validation logic is working correctly. You can use a unit testing framework like XUnit or NUnit to write tests for your validation attributes and validatable object implementations. Example, XUnit. Key takeaways from the tests asterisk. Asterisk. Test both valid and invalid scenarios. Asterisk. Test edge cases, example exactly 18 years old. Asterisk. Test with null or empty values if applicable. Asterisk. Assert that the correct error message is returned when validation fails. Conclusion. This tutorial covered a wide range of techniques for implementing custom validation in Blazor forms. We started with basic data annotations and progressed to more advanced concepts like custom validation attributes, validatable object, asynchronous validation, dependency injection, and unit testing. Remember to adapt these techniques to your specific needs and always strive for clear, maintainable, and testable code. While the complete asynchronous remote validation isn't fully implemented here due to the synchronous nature of dataannotationsvalidator, you should now have a strong understanding of how to build robust and sophisticated validation systems in your Blazor applications. Good luck.